Right, let's go to Scotland now, where new controversial hate crime laws are to come into effect from April.
The First Minister, Humza Yousaf, has been criticised for rushing through legislation without proper scrutiny, and there are fears it will actually mean restrictions on free speech.
So let's find out if it will. Joining us now is former SNP Glasgow City Councillor Austin Sheridan and Dr Benjamin Jones from the Free Speech Union. Let me start with you, Dr Jones, if I may. Will this legislation affect free speech?
Yes, it will, and in a dramatic way. The SNP government has had 3 years to bring this act into effect, and fittingly it's chosen to do so on April Fool's Day. We remain deeply concerned about, for instance, the stirring up offence that the act will create, the effect that will have on people who want to discuss, for instance, protecting women's spaces and the debates about trans rights. It also removes the dwelling defence that protects what you say in your own home. And the SNP have proposed that later this year, age will become a protected characteristic. So if you say to a member of your own family in your own home, you're a grumpy old such and such, there's every chance they could report you to the police and you could have a police constable knocking on your door. It's a ludicrous piece of legislation.
Austin, that's extraordinary that what you say behind closed doors could have you calling the police on your child or your family member.
But I think if you're having a joke with a family member and they decided to call the police, I would find that a little bit peculiar. To be perfectly honest, George Galloway said that during the 2021 Scottish Parliament elections as well. I just find that argument peculiar. What is important, though, is the protections around, say, abortion clinics, for example, where women should be able to access those services without fear of protest, without fear of being insulted. And hate being done towards them. So absolutely, I mean, there's also a bill called the Safe Access Zone, sort of it's been debated through the Scottish Parliament right now too. That's Gillian Mackay, the Green MSP for Central Scotland, who's spearheading that legislation, which has the support from the SNP benches too. But these things are in place to make sure that there are laws in place to protect everyone and that the law is fair to everyone. If you look at, for example, the kind of proposals that came out saying that the MPs they could be banned from attending pro-Palestinian rallies. That is the kind of legislation that is discriminatory by essentially saying the government will allow you to attend some protests but not others. Our legislation will be fair to all citizens, and that's how it will apply, unlike the kind of chat that we're getting at Westminster, which actually is...
We're going to jump in here because we want to get Dr Jones. Dr Jones, just respond to that if you could.
I think, as listeners will tell from my accent, this law is not going to affect me personally. I think it's going to be a disaster for the public in Scotland and for members of the Free Speech Union in Scotland who will be turning to us for assistance. I think also we have a danger of a kind of ratcheting effect as progressive governments within the United Kingdom and in the West generally try and outcompete each other by proposing the most censorious hate crime legislation. We can go on to talk about this if you like, but for instance, I think Labour's embrace of the definition of Islamophobia proposed by the All-Party Parliamentary Group on British Muslims is another instance where we will see south of the border this ratcheting effect, this competition between different governments to come up with the most broad, the most vague, the most censorious pieces of legislation governing hate crimes that they can. And I think we're heading into a complete disaster for free speech north of the border. My only hope is that we can resist this south of the border for as long as we possibly can.
Go back to our SNP councillor. That's pretty stern criticism of you, the most severe... Go on.
It's interesting. I mean, he says that because at the end of the day, no one in Scotland came out and the Prime Minister came out and condemned George Galloway essentially being elected in Rochdale. An expression of the will of people of a constituency, when the Prime Minister exclusively came out and essentially said he didn't accept that election result. Now, I'm certainly no fan of George Galloway at all, I can assure you of that. But when it comes to the kind of behaviours of government and looking at trying to suppress people, a government that is going to be using this as the Tories. The Tories are intending to use to pit people against each other. in order to try and win an election. And their behaviour is concerning. Their behaviour is disgusting. It's bordering on fascism. So in actual fact, I'm really glad we've got a government in Scotland that resists that kind of way of governing, and that our laws will apply to everyone equally. And it is about protecting everyone to make sure that people feel safe, so that whether you're from a Jewish background, a Muslim background, whether you're transgender, whether you're gay, whether you're black, whether you're whether you're from the Middle East, that everybody has the right to be protected, and nobody has the right to be discriminated against. Whereas the kind of language that we're getting from Westminster is that they want to cherry pick where they want to impose bans such as pro-Palestinian marches and so on. That's not the way to govern. But that's all part of the Tory agenda, to pit people against each other so they can try and win an election. And frankly, it's disgusting.
All right. We'll have to end it there, gentlemen. That was Austin Sheridan from the SNP and Dr. Benjamin Jones from the Free Speech Union. Always lively, robust